Rima Truth Reports. I'm Rima MD. I am the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation, and I have with me two people whom I love, two people whom I treasure, and two people who are being abused by the system that is being brought in globally to abuse us all. These are canaries in the cage, and we need to listen very carefully to what their experience is, and then we need to figure out how we can support them. These are two freedom sayers and freedom advocates who are very important to us. We have Billy TK and Vinny Eastwood from New Zealand. Now, you may say, well, I don't live in New Zealand. That's far away from me. Whatever their problem is has nothing to do with me, and you couldn't be more wrong. By the way, my co-host and co-trustee, Ralph Fusatola, is in the wilds of Texas and will be joining us when he gets his connection set up. They do have internet in Texas, I understand. Big internet. Anyway, Ralph will be joining us in a little bit. So we have two people from New Zealand who are facing horrendous miscarriages of correctness and justice and the law. And they are facing it because they're doing what we're doing right here now, today. They're speaking. That's it. That's it. They're speaking about what their truth is and how their freedom lays out. And the response, you might call it the New World Order response, you might call it the globalist response, you might call it the coordinated censorship and canceling of freedoms response. You can call it what you like, but it is the response that we're all facing when we speak freely and speak truth. So I am going to back up and back off and let Vinny Eastwood and Billy Tekahana speak about their case, their situation, their reality. There are things that they are enjoined by the court from actually saying. We're talking about freedom of speech, and they've been limited in what they're allowed to say, but they're pretty smart gentlemen, and they will manage to convey what they need to you. So welcome to the Dr. Truth Reports. You have our support, you have our love, you have our determination to be in solidarity with you in every way that we can, and I hope you'll tell us how to do that, and back us up, take us through the events, and tell us what in heaven's name is going on in New Zealand and in your situations, gentlemen.
You go first, Billy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Rima, and of course, People for People, my family at that, peopleforpeople.ning.com, and Vinny for being here. Essentially, this is something that is important for everybody around the world to see, because whilst it may appear that the COVID-19 punishments are being marched away from, the reality of it is they're being replaced with climate change tyranny. And what is happening to Vinny and I is that we are being used to send a message to not only the New Zealanders but the world that you cannot stand up, speak the truth in a peaceful manner, which is meant to be guaranteed by the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. You cannot speak if you are in opposition to the New Zealand government's narrative. And if you do, you are likely to be crushed, persecuted, prosecuted, punished for having the audacity to dare speak up against harm and tyranny. Now, we were arrested on August the 18th, 2021, while protesting against lockdown harm in New Zealand. New Zealand had massive amounts of suicide, epidemic scale suicide numbers during the lockdowns, social harm, social disease, not even looking at the economic destruction, etc. And so I was compelled by my conscience to, along with Vinny, to protest against this harm, to draw the government's attention and the world's attention to the plight that is being caused by the rollout of the lockdowns as a measure to deal with COVID-19. And it's now understood, of course, all this time later, that the lockdown measures far outstripped the harm that the so-called COVID-19 virus could cause somebody, and that they weren't a measure that should have been deployed and used, but they were. And most of the world now, either side of the debate, accept that they weren't appropriate and they were very, very harmful. So that's pretty much a given now. But we were arrested on the August the 18th. We had known that people that were arrested before at protests or anything like that were processed after 2 or 3 hours and let go and then get a summons, and it was all very low level. They didn't do that with us. They took us to the remand centre at the largest prison in New Zealand. They kept us for a day and a half, and they tried to keep us in prison to force a guilty plea out of us so that they could keep us in prison for as long as they wanted. And which we did get bail, but bail was under horrendous conditions. And then 18 months later, when it finally went to trial, we were found guilty of breaching the COVID-19 Public Health Response Act 2020 and a direct order associated with it. The charges that we were found guilty of include going to a protest during a lockdown and organising a protest during a lockdown. And on the 31st of March last week, we were sentenced, and at the sentence, we had presented to the judge what we call the Corrections and Probation Service pre-sentencing report. And for both Vinny and I, we had recommendations of a non-custodial sentence, a non-prison sentence. For me, I was a little bit different in that I'm a former member of the New Zealand Army and Police, Voluntary Fire Brigade. I was a support recruit for that, community worker for many, many years, former politician, a pastor, etc., with no previous convictions. So the judge promptly, they read out my distinguished community service career and all that, the fact that I've never been in trouble, blah, blah, and then promptly sentenced me to 5 months prison and then reduced it down to 4 months because we'd had 19 days under house arrest and 2 weeks for my so-called great character. This is unprecedented. This is probably the greatest example of persecution for ideology that we've ever seen in New Zealand. We've seen miscarriages of justice for sure in the judiciary here in New Zealand, but this is politically enhanced, politically driven and motivated persecution of myself and Vinny, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, Dr. Rima. We've seen nothing like this before. We're starting a campaign called the Justice for Billy Tekahika and Vinny Eastwood campaign. It's a change.org petition that we want to call the world's attention to our plight, but not only that, signal to the government that what they're doing is recognised as tyrannical and tyranny, and to underline how bad this really is. Yesterday in the newspapers and the media in New Zealand, a woman who 26-year-old woman murdered a 73-year-old man. The charge got brought down to manslaughter. She lied to the police for a year while they were investigating this incident. She was found guilty of manslaughter, and she got 12 months home detention versus the 4 months of prison that I got and Vinny got 3 months for a crime that they call a crime that meant no property damage, no people harm, no COVID cases, a small outdoor protest of 80 to 100 people, and 12 months home detention for a murderer, 4 months of prison for 2 family men. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's something along the lines of when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. It's a very famous saying. And this country is a representation of really the entire Western world, if you will, where we have a predominantly democratic, freedom-loving sort of society where experiments are done by anti-democratic, anti-freedom societies to see whether or not they work. And in New Zealand, that experiment proved successful, overwhelmingly. I believe $1 billion worth of advertising went into these lockdowns and the reinforcement of the narrative. And so that's a country of 5 million people with $1 billion worth of advertising. You couldn't turn the radio dial to another without finding the exact same advertisements being placed. The entire population got riddled with fear and doubt, and it seems that this has affected not just the ordinary everyday people, but the bureaucracy of the government as well, where people who are just doing their jobs and collecting their paychecks have become narrative pushers and big cult believers in said narrative. And this is the difficult situation that we face in New Zealand as those who know the truth about the dangers therein, and those people who absolutely believe it and would die believing it. That's what we face.
So what I'm hearing is that the judge, as a representative of the judicial system, has somehow become so aligned with this new narrative, this $1 billion baby that's been foisted on the New Zealand population, that the previous adherence or affiliation to the judicial narrative, to the rules, to the rule of law, is less compelling to the judge than this irrational, fear-based, punish, regardless of what the reality is, narrative. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, those are your words, not mine.
Okay, those are my words. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that somehow the rule of law and the rule of rational thinking has been dispensed with for a victimless crime, which is in fact, if I understand, a misdemeanor, with a jail sentence meted out to each of you after home detention and extended restriction of your freedoms about what you could say and where you could go on the internet and whom you could associate with. And quite a number is, oh, Ralph is here.
I'm here. And I'm with some friends in Austin, and I wanted to hop on and just say to Billy and to Vinny, oh yeah, please log up, you got me something there. And I need to get my...
All right.
Okay.
You're still live. We're live, Ralph. Yeah.
Ralph, whatever you're doing, you're not speaking to us at the moment.
Understood. I'm going to go off because it's not going to work.
Here.
That's all.
Translates to Ralph loves you too, and we will do whatever we can to support you. Right, Ralph?
Oh yeah, message loud and
Yes.
clear.
Okay. So I am saying that. I am saying that to throw aside the rule of law and rational response to lawful behaviors, like speaking freely about something that you disagree with, bespeaks a level of unlawfulness that a society cannot survive if it is permeated with. It's very frightening, not only for you in New Zealand, but also for the rest of us, because we understand that this is globalist behavior. This has nothing to do with national priorities. It has everything to do with global constriction.
And the same kind of test subjects that we have here are going to be exported overseas. So if you haven't seen this kind of tyranny in your backyard yet, you will, unless it's stopped here.
It's coming. Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying there, Dr. Rima. The judge the other day was clearly ideological. He wasn't justice. He was ideologically hostile towards us. How do
you know that? How do you know that?
Because the fact that he would not bear the intellectual evaluation of the science behind lockdowns being scrutinised. Well, not even the science. I would say the narrative of how the government used the narrative that the government used in New Zealand to justify these lockdowns is that the infection fatality rate of the so-called virus was so harmful and terrifying that they needed to use these measures such as lockdowns. But the fact is, their own information said that 99.97% approximately of New Zealanders will survive contact with the so-called virus. And they were saying that at the same time they were telling everybody it was the deadliest disease known to mankind. So they were plainly lying. But the other thing is that the judge would not entertain the idea that, given that we're 20 months down the road now, that we now know what we didn't know back then. This is them, not me. I knew what was going on then. He was not at all disposed to actually evaluating data that would be able to give him an idea as to the real risk that we posed to the public by having a small outdoor protest like this. He was not prepared to do that. He was not prepared to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter had a 20,000 person protest times two in New Zealand a year earlier during a lockdown. He would not acknowledge that there were two protests, 10,000 people at each, and not one arrest, Dr. Rima, not one arrest. The police said they would take an educational approach to it, but not one arrest. And he wouldn't allow the relevancy of that to be considered in light of our 80 to 100 person protest that we did on the 18th of August. He wouldn't allow for any of it. He wouldn't consider the fact that I didn't have any convictions at all in my history. He was interested in how he described me in his sentencing spiel as someone that had that was after notoriety and fame. He described me as someone that was unremorseful and didn't care about people and essentially selfish. And yet, as I said to him after, I said, the whole reason I spoke up is because I'm not selfish and I care for the community. That's why I did it. And but he wouldn't entertain that, and it was clearly in the minds of everyone that sat in that courtroom that even the police staff themselves could see that he was persecuting us using his judicial power. It was clear. Even the police staff said that to me.
And how did he describe you, Vinny?
Basically, he just said that I had no remorse, even though I put in a letter of apology. I'm not sure if he got it. And that I was guilty of the same things that Billy was guilty of, just to a slightly lesser degree. So they took off a little bit of my sentence for what we'd already been through under those month of 6 weeks of no internet and not being able to leave the house and having bail checks at 4 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night and whenever the hell they wanted to turn up. And these things also mitigated against my sentence, where they gave me 10% off for my character references, a stack of character references. You know, I'm a very good dude, I would have thought, and I've helped out a lot of people over the years from all over the country and all over the world for all sorts of issues. And I got a big stack of people that I've helped over the years to give me character references that were glowing. And I didn't need to really tell them to make them glowing, they just did. And that swayed the judge to take a further 10% off my sentence. But then you're still faced with 3 months in prison when you've got an 8-week-old son, and that was kind of very, very difficult to think about at the time. And so I really didn't. I had felt that we kind of had a ace up our sleeve for some reason, because when we were arrested, Billy asked me beforehand, do you think we're going to get arrested? And I said, yep. And he goes, well, why are we doing this? And I go, because there's an old saying, Billy, if you want to expose a fascist, you're going to make them act like it. And I had been prepared psychologically for a harsh sentence, because that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted them to be heavy-handed. I wanted them to go over the top. Otherwise, there would be no attention called to the true nightmare and plague of corruption that we face here in this nation.
Do you share that position, Billy?
Well, I kind of see it a different way, because I mean, I'm older and I've got the added threat of being a political identity, and I have endured in the last 3 years many threats of harm and violence, many slander attacks, and I am a legitimate target for this government, and we all know what they do. Regimes and totalitarian regimes, what they will do to people if they can get them into custody. And that's for me, these two things that concern me. One, if I committed a crime of any kind, I'd be the first to admit it. I would be the first to admit it, to clear my conscience between myself and God. That's number one. I'd be the first to do that. But this is no crime. There was no crime, and this is injustice, the sentence. Number two is I do have a concern that if they put me in prison, they'll try and kill me. Because I
don't doubt that in any way.
I have been a big thorn in their side now for 3 years, and I was voted the third preferred Prime Minister in 2020 during the last election. I had millions of people following me. I was the leader of the largest freedom movement ever in New Zealand history in New Zealand. And you know, I stuck my head right up and out to deal with this. And so and a third thing too is that I've got a beautiful wife and 6 children and 2 grandchildren, and I've got a flock, my ministry, House of the Lord Ministries. I have people that rely on me. I've got a flock also there that I look after, and loads of other people that I do take care of as part of my broadcasting work that I do to keep people calm and keep them focused on understanding what's happening and how they can mitigate it. And so, you know, I take that very seriously. And the idea of going away for a few months in prison to be taken away from my family is, for this purpose, is not a good enough reason. It's not a good enough reason. So, and you know, in Vinny's instance, in my view, he's got Elena, a little girl, and he's got a newborn baby, Alfie, who's 8 weeks old. And you know, this judge looked at Vinny and then looked at Vinny's partner and said, I acknowledge you, partner, and acknowledge you, and also the newborn baby, acknowledge you, and then promptly sentence Vinny to 3 months prison. That's the most callous, coldest thing I've ever seen in my blinking life. I've never seen anything like that, Rima, and I thought I'd seen some pretty crappy things in my life, but nothing like that. You know, even my sentence is bad enough, but additionally to see the callousness for which he acknowledges Vinny's partner and newborn baby and my wife and my children that are sitting there, and then sentence us family men, non-violent family men, to prison is just, it's unfathomable. How can it not be ideological when they give us that sentence and a murderer 12 months home detention? How can that be justice?
So what happens next? Here in the United States, we have an appeals process. If something like that happens, the lawyers involved would immediately file an appeal and seek for judicial review and seek for reversal and so on. Is that similar?
Vinny?
We can't really answer that to a large degree because of our bail conditions. So,
all right, tell me hypothetically, if someone is sentenced to jail, can they invoke an appeals process in New Zealand?
Yes, they can.
Yeah.
Yes, they can, and that's what we're going through. We are bound as a condition of our bail not to discuss our appeal or anything to do with it, but we are appealing, and that's why we are on bail now and not in jail.
So you are not discussing your appeal. I am discussing your appeal. I am bound by nothing. When General Burt, my husband, would say I can't discuss that because of the oaths that I have taken about confidential information and security information, I would say I have not taken any oaths at all. I can discuss anything I want. Of course, he knew stuff I didn't. But I can discuss the fact that when a miscarriage of justice is perpetrated, then it is incumbent upon people to support that process of getting it overturned, of getting it corrected. And that takes money and it takes support. And if you are a subscriber to the Natural Solutions Foundation newsletter, you will receive information asking you to take various steps to support the correct judicial outcome for a non-crime, for non-violent people who are using their permitted, their correct right and responsibility to speak out for their fellow citizens and for the other people on the planet and say, this is wrong, this is right, this shouldn't happen, this must happen. The point here, beyond New Zealand, beyond the threat of jail time for these two people who should not go to jail, the point is, this is you. This is you expressing an opinion on social media. This is you saying something to a colleague, a friend, a relative, a neighbor. This is you questioning something that's told to you by officialdom or by the mouthpiece of officialdom, the media. This is you. This is not just Vinny and Billy. This is you saying, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense to me, and being brought down by a totalitarian system that doesn't want you to say what isn't right for you. This is your battle. This is my battle, in the same way that it's Vinny's battle and that it's Billy TK's battle. These people have stood in the dock for in front of us. But if it doesn't if it hasn't gotten through to you that this is a global tyranny, then I don't know what we've done wrong so far. This is a global set of issues. The national structure of New Zealand or Azerbaijan or the United States or Uruguay will be used to achieve the same tyrannical ends if we allow this to happen. Would you disagree with what I'm saying, gentlemen?
Not at all.
I think we're predilected towards calm because we've seen these things before and we've had a long time to adjust to them. But for somebody who's hearing this for the first time, hearing that your government is tyrannical, you might wonder, what does that mean? Well, you know how you wake up when you kind of feel like it in the morning and you have to go to work and you've got to go shopping and things of that nature? What if somebody told you what work you could do, what shopping you could do, what time you could get up, what time you had to get up, what time you had to be home, things of that nature? That's tyranny, okay, as opposed to freedom. It affects every single facet of your life. And this can be quite a frightening prospect to realize all of a sudden that you're living in a tyrannical state, one that was built up around you for years and decades and a century without you even knowing about it. You might think of yourself as foolish. How did I not see this coming? You weren't foolish. Your enemy were very well prepared, very well informed. They learned everything there was to know about you, your desires, your hopes, your dreams, and every single possible method there could possibly be to make you abandon them.
Exactly. This is not crazy talk. This is not excessive talk. This is not exaggerated in any way. As a matter of fact, it's rather calm. It's rather measured, given what's really going on. And you have to understand that these signal cases, what's happened to Billy and to Vinny, for example, and what's happening to an increasing number of other people as they're being censored, as they're being removed from the public square, as people like to call it, one way or another, that this is designed to prevent you from being willing to think and to speak. And as Vinny said, it's being engineered and put into place by people who are really smart and have endless resources and have studied carefully, as Vinny has just said, every single thing about you so that they can manipulate you, stimulate fear, calm your fear, stimulate compliance, stimulate resistance when they want you to resist so they can crush it in yet another way. This is not random. These are not just two people who are out there in the wilds of faraway New Zealand who have been bad guys and deserve to be punished. These are people who are speaking your truth and their own and are being persecuted, as so many other people are being. Billy, talk to us about what's happening with the freedom movement in New Zealand, which had been expanding and accelerating.
Well, it's been really strange because for me, I was the largest freedom figurehead in terms of support and profile in 2020 and even in 2021, and there was a lot of pushback by people that were already activists, or minor parties that were involved in pushing against the government. And so, I mean, even as of this morning, I had somebody posting something questioning whether I'm controlled opposition, even as recent as this morning. And I just said to this guy, "Are you a complete nut job?" I said, "If you look at the persecution and the hatred I've had to endure for the last 3 years, the loss of my careers, the loss of friends and family, so-called, the vilification, the slander in the mainstream media, and now this, you'd have to be a nut job to think anyone going through that is some sort of paid opposition agent. You just wouldn't. You just can't. I mean, but I have been hearing bits and pieces that various freedom groups are saying that they'll get behind, getting behind Vinny and I, which is encouraging. But it's been very slow from them. It's definitely been very, very slow from all the different freedom groups from what I can see. There hasn't been a huge jump up and down of it because people have not matured here, Dr. Rima. In 2020, I was pleading with people to unite, to work together, to come together, to deal with this, to confront these plans and people that are pushing them in our country and in the world. And they would not. People were so selfish and self-centered, they would not consider it because they had their own plan, despite the fact that they maybe were only minor in their profile and in their support base. If we had come together, the collective and the aggregate would have been enough to have put in 8 to 10 members of parliament into our government. And so these other players and actors would not consider that, therefore nobody got in. And so our freedom movement here needs to mature, and I'm saying it, and I've been saying it for a long time. And they still have not come to that critical point where they're saying there's something really, really bad going on with our country, and the government system is beyond redemption the way it is. The current system is not about the right to live in freedom and personal sovereignty, national sovereignty, and even democracy. It's not set up to honour and respect those things, therefore it needs to go. But no one's saying that, Rima. No one is actually getting to the root of the beast, or the root of the problem, and calling it out the way that it needs to be called out. And that disturbs me because, it's almost like worrying about a firecracker going off in your hand when you've got a nuclear bomb behind you getting ready to count down and tick off. And people are not maturing fast enough to understand even the globalism aspect. The freedom movement has not fully matured into an understanding where I believe that they've got a really good grasp on what's happening here. You speak to people about how you've helped me to understand the international health regulations, Dr. Rima, and trying to get people to understand how the WHO's global pandemic preparedness treaty is going to affect us. That people don't have a clear grasp on how important those issues are. They see them as some sort of boring administrative event, but they may be administrative, that's for sure. But these events that they portend, they will eradicate the light of freedom across this planet, because what they're going to do, and I've seen countless evidences of it, is that it's going to be integrated and ensconced into climate change, the whole central bank digital currency system, the social credit system, and ultimately Agenda 2030 and the fourth industrial revolution. And so there are some amazing people down here in New Zealand that are in the freedom movement. But if we were to look at the organisations that are meant to be leading out, I think they're very far. I think they're quite a lot behind the 8 ball. And I would like to see everybody and mature and grow up and be big boys and big girls, and saying, right, let's not have 20 organisations fighting for fame and clicks. Let's all come together and unite and finally confront this together.
You have conversations with people on occasion who are in your field, per se, and you come away from the conversation sometimes with this thought, and it happens a lot. This person doesn't know what they're dealing with. They don't know how dark and scary things truly are. If we were to be screaming and crying and waving our arms in the air, that would be an appropriate emotional response to the threat that we face. Just because we're calm doesn't mean the threat is any less ever present.
That is such an important point. Let me tell you a little bit about a conversation thread that I've been having with some indigenous groups of people. I am deeply, deeply, deeply concerned about the proposed amendments that the international health regulations are being exposed to alteration by, and that will take place, or at least it's slated to take place, during the World Health Assembly in Geneva from May 21st to 23rd. It's a done deal if we don't undone it. These amendments have been negotiated in secret. They are changes that turn the WHO from an advisory body, bad enough, one of the most corrupt and damaging bodies in the world, followed perhaps by the U.S. Center for Disease Creation, the CDC, and the Fraud and Death Administration, but certainly a deadly force on its own and intended to be an organization committed to genocide and pretty good at it. Well, the World Health Organization has been, since its founding in 1945, an advisory organization. And what they've been advising has been awful in every sphere that I'm aware of. But now they want to turn themselves, through these amendments to the international health regulations, to the single central controlling organism of the planet, headed by their Director General, against whose decisions or edicts there is no review process, none. So this man is being given absolute authority. Who is he? Tedros Ghebreyesus is a known, documented major genocidalist. When he was Minister of Health for the Ethiopian government, he was responsible for the intentional death and disappearance of between 1.5 and 2 million people. And Ethiopia is a tiny country. He didn't have all that many people to work with. But he did genocide quite a number of people. He's a true monster. Well, the 307 amendments need to be stopped. So it occurred to me that if we could get sovereign nations to stand up and say, no, because this was illegitimately entered, no, because this is antithetical to the basic human dignities that I have to represent for my country, no, because of this, and no, because of that, to the signal most important ones, then we could throw a monkey wrench into the juggernaut that's rolling forward at the World Health Assembly with this scripted, supposed representational process, which is already, as I said, a done deal. So I started meeting with supposedly sovereign nations of indigenous people around the world, because all it would really take is one person to throw these monkey wrenches into the works in a very particular and well-organized, well-disciplined way. And so I've been having all these meetings. And some of the indigenous chiefs understand that this can be done, and some of them have the capacity as sovereign nations to apply for membership to the WHO, and who knows, maybe even be seated in time to participate in the meeting in May. But we keep getting these people, like somebody that I met with yesterday in the Caribbean, who keeps saying, all we have to do is understand nature and water and air and remain true to ourselves, and nothing bad can happen, because this is a spiritual battle. And today, a chief of a sovereign people in Canada, a sovereign indigenous people, wrote to me and said, listen, the WHO is a really evil organization, and if you sign an agreement with them, if you become a member, you are giving up your sovereignty, and you're forming an adhesion contract, and they are the worst force on the planet. So what we just have to do is be calm and righteous and be able to defend our borders against the bad guys. And another woman writes, a clan chieftain, and she says, or maybe nation chieftain, she says, we simply have to be pure. And I'm thinking, you can be pure as you're herded to the gas chambers. We need to be upset. We need to say there is no reason for calm. Stay calm, run, walk, don't run is the wrong response here. Don't be calm. There's nothing to be calm about unless you're on the wrong side. Unless you are them and you say, these little people, they can raise their protests, but we are in charge and soon they will be gone. That would be a good reason to stay calm. But for us, people who value humanity, people who value our lives, people who value our freedoms and our sovereignty personally and nationally, calm is the wrong answer at this point. Activated, protesting, saying, no, don't you dare, is the only rational thing. And I'm sitting here listening to the two people. I consider you both dear friends. I'm sitting here listening, wondering, how are they so calm? How are they so rational? God, I wouldn't be. I would be climbing off the ceiling or being pulled off the ceiling. How are you staying calm, and why are you staying calm?
Can I answer that on my part? After animals are chased by a predator, they shake for a while, so that adrenaline and all of that tension gets out of their muscles, so that they can go back to an ordinary life. I've had some time to do that shaking, and now I feel whole again, and now I can do what I must. That's basically it.
Understood. And if we were in the same studio, I would put down my microphone or my headset and I would walk over and I would embrace you. You know that. And you too, Billy. Go ahead, Billy. What were you going to say? Oh, you're on mute. I think we can't hear you.
Got it.
Okay.
I want to touch on the Indigenous community references. I'm Indigenous Māori New Zealander, and I've worked in Canada and the US. In Canada with the Assembly of First Nations, and in the US with the National Congress of American Indians. I've been involved in First Nations international trade roundtables, and spoken at length about cooperation and jurisdiction around trade in Canada and the US. And you're completely right, Dr. Rima. The approach that Indigenous people are taking to dealing with all this has been manipulated and bribed and paid for from within the United Nations. Let me quantify why I say this. I went to the United Nations as a Māori representative in 2016, and I went to what's called the United Nations Permanent Forum of Indigenous Issues, and I have never seen a greater tokenism than what I saw there. all I saw was the manipulation of the entire global indigenous community. I'm talking including Celtic people from the United Kingdom, Samis from Scandinavia, Africans, Amazonian First Nations people, everyone, everywhere. It didn't matter what color you are. If you were indigenous, you were at this thing. And all I saw the UN was manipulate.
Sorry, Billy, you said it didn't matter what color you were. If you were indigenous, you were, and I missed the word.
Yeah, you were at this event if you had interest in indigenous issues. And but what I saw was the UN manipulating all these people, promising them sovereignty and freedom if they just followed their formula. And while they did that, they would promise funding. They would then get them to select their own elite representatives. And then they created an elite committee where they put all these elite indigenous representatives into this committee and made them superstars, representatives to the UN. And what they were doing was they were promising indigenous communities support essentially in return for their support of UN programs and consensus. And what gave them away, and this is a very important point here, we were at we got outside of the main UN building, and we had this is in New York City, and we had a meeting at a convention center just for indigenous people. We were there in this room, everybody was talking, and there was this council, of course, of people speaking, and these people, in my view, were no different to the bureaucrats that we see here. And two Amazonian First Nations representatives came into it was that classic thing, the doors flew open while we're all in there, and there are these two people in there, and they are Brazilian Amazonian First Nations representatives. And they walked in, they said, and they had an interpreter who could speak for them, and they said, look, they were little people, little Amazonian people that I'd met a year before in Brazil. I didn't know these particular people, and they said, look, our village has just saved for 3 years to fly us two people here to New York to come to this important meeting to lay our plight at the feet of this committee so that we can get help from the UN. They said our lands are being taken off us, we're being forced off, we're being murdered, our habitat is being destroyed, and we desperately need your help. You know what? This committee would not recognize them. That was the end of it for me. That was it. I saw it. I thought, this is a have. This is the greatest, saddest display of tokenism. And so what you have on a global basis are all these so-called indigenous representatives that get treated like kings and queens and flown all over the world to Geneva and to New York and to all these UN plenaries and all that. And they get sold these concepts and go back and sell them to their people. And then they can turn back and say, well, one tribe in New Zealand supports it, so that's New Zealand done. And it's a great scam. And these people, and I know some of them here in New Zealand, they're just foolish. They are so foolish and blind, they can't see the forest, literally through that big giant redwood that's standing in front of them. And I've seen it so many times. And the Māori people in New Zealand, we are being fooled by these people that go to these meetings, coming back and saying that the UN is a great thing and promises us justice and sovereignty. It's complete rubbish, as you know. If anyone reads the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it is a straw man fakery to get Indigenous peoples desperate for recognition and help to support UN agendas. That's all it is.
Absolutely.
In reference to how I stay calm, Sister Rima, is number one, my trust is in God. My trust is in Jesus. This map of what we're seeing being rolled out in front of us is something that the Bible's known about for a long, long time. And so that's what keeps me calm. My beautiful wife, who's very strong, we're a family of faith, and we've got that, but we are fighting this. We are fighting this prison sentence because of what it means. We're fighting it.
Not only what it means for you, but
For
what it
everyone.
means for freedom, what it means for justice. If we do not have a rule of law that we can rely upon, then we have a rule of tyranny that we can only fear.
Can I?
And I think that's, yes,
jump
please.
in here. My brother's building this, or at least trying to build this kind of natural health retreat sort of thing in Tahiti. And in the concept of building it, he looked at ancient cultures and came across this concept called the 7-generation principle. So if there's 7 generations, the 3 generations before you and the 3 generations after you, what would they think about what you're doing today? That's the reason why you've got to do what needs to be done here and now, because your ancestors will you to, and those who come after you, your progeny, relying on you.
Indeed, indeed. The thing that's so distressing to me in terms of the indigenous interactions that are the interactions that I've been having with indigenous peoples is that it's all well and good to say we must trust in the natural world. But to say we must trust in the natural world, and anything that doesn't allow us to just focus where we want to focus is irrelevant. We must simply appreciate the water, appreciate the air, appreciate the land, appreciate the plants and the animals, and everything will be fine because we're pure in our hearts, which completely ignores the reality that you're dealing with massively well-organized, wicked organizations driven by slaughtering people. So it's
This is something that Mark Passio talks about, is that evil can and does and has in the past win. All right, evil can win. Anybody who sits there
Yes.
and sits there and says, "I've got faith, I am protected, they can't harm me," so on and so forth. Those are very, very dangerous beliefs to cling to when you're facing an enemy like this.
Yes, exactly. Now, that's not to say that deep determination and adherence to your basic principles, spiritual and religious and otherwise, is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. It's very, very, very important. But the battles have to be fought on many levels because the assaults are coming to us on many levels. And I think it's a huge mistake to say, well, you know, I'm going to go to a sun dance and I'm going to do the ritual purification, and then I'm going to wear the blessed garments, and no bullet can touch me, because we know the result of that.
Well, let's
We
not
know the
forget
result of that.
that these people that we're talking about do rituals of their own. And do you see them standing down their armies, stopping their police from enforcing their will? Have they told all their bodyguards that they don't have a job anymore? No, we did a ritual, bro. We're protected now. We don't need to pay you anymore. No. That is the level of insanity that you're talking about here.
Yes, and we don't need more funding for our weapons against humanity. Well, we do, actually, they say. Billy, I want you to tell us about River of Lies.
Thank you. So the River of Lies, the New Zealand Scamdemic investigative documentary, is well underway. It is in editing phase. Both you and Vinny are in this documentary, And so we have been very, very, very unbelievably busy and committed to that. We have an amazing videographer who is co-directing it together, who is very, very busy with that right now. And so we are in supercharged mode to get this thing done and out. It's going to be a 2-part documentary, and we want to get it out as soon as we can, because what I'm also wanting out of this documentary is that, you know, that people who may be against us or on the fence, who can't quite grasp the reality of what we're dealing with, are going to be able to see this thing and go, hell, there are major problems here with the government narrative, well, the world government narrative, as well as the New Zealand government narrative around COVID-19 and these other associated issues that are coming up as a consequence of it. And so anybody's going to be able to look at this thing and go, holy smoke, you know, I didn't want to see this, but now I've seen it. I can't unsee it. And this is unbelievable. And it's going to motivate people. And I'll go back to the judge the other day. He will not at all entertain the reality of what we're dealing with. But this documentary is designed to help people just like that, to look at it, just look at it, let it either speak to you or not. And the beauty of how we've constructed it, we're mostly 99% of the data that we're using is their data from their sources. That's condemning them. We've got wonderful expert commentary from yourself and people like Robert Malone and Mike Yeadon. Mike Yeadon is amazing, and connecting you with him, of course. I got another personal message from him just today, so I'm keeping in good contact with Mike Yeadon. I mean, he's the former, as you know, he is the former chief scientist and also vice president of Pfizer. So he's been to the very, very top of the beast ladder, if you like, and he's horrified by all of this, but he's given us good data and commentary. And we've got the stories of people that have been harmed, hurt, that have seen things. I've got policemen, I've got funeral directors, I've got all sorts of people that are involved in this. And so it's going to be a huge expose. If people would like to know more and to support this, all they need to do is go to our website, www.riveroflies.co.nz. Let me say that again. www.riveroflies, riveroflies, riveroflies.co.nz. If you go there, you'll be able to sign up to a blog and see our trailers and get a good sense of the project. And so it's coming. I think what they're hoping to do is that the more pressure on me that they apply, that I'll just roll over and suck my thumb in the corner. But it's too late now. It's too late. It's coming. It's out there. And even if I got vanished tomorrow, it's coming.
When will the River of Lies, do you think? Of course, things always can go wrong, but when do you anticipate that River of Lies will be available for the rest of us?
May.
Okay. And riveroflies.co.nz, did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
You're
and
not,
I know that's
planning to release it during the satanic holiday of May Day?
No.
All right.
Although
so the Star Wars holiday then, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
Vinny, how can we support you? What are you doing at the moment? Not at the moment you're sitting in the studio, but you know what I mean.
Well, this is what I've been doing for much of my adult life. Actually, is sitting in the studio, interviewing people, and getting the truth out about everything that needs to be heard and discussed that nobody really wants to look at. And I've been rather enjoying it. But at the moment anyway, with a new baby and obviously being deplatformed has made it a real difficult struggle to survive just on a week-to-week basis. And so I am asking for donations. I would love people to go to vinnyeastwood.com. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question. And Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. And please go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, and click on the donate page. And through KiwiBank, PayPal, and Patreon through my band, you can support me that way because I was banned from Patreon, as well as Twitter as well. I just have a new Twitter account. So anybody who wants to interview me, please do. We need to get the word out about what is happening at the moment here. Anybody who wants to help me, but they can't interview or anything, you do know other talk show hosts and things of that nature that you could contact and ask them to interview me regarding this case and how important it is, not only just for New Zealand, but also globally. And I would love it if people would just give me a bell, message me, call me, that kind of thing, just to talk and see what they're going through as well, because it often helps me to help others.
Of course. What does international pressure do for you at this point? For instance, if the large number of people who are Natural Solutions Foundation email recipients and website viewers and listeners to this program, if the other people on peopleforpeople.ning.com, the other hosts ask their folks to respond, what should they do that would be helpful to put you where you need to be, and that's not in jail?
Okay, so I want to pick up on that because I'm leading a campaign for Vinny and I. The campaign is Justice for Billy Tekahika and Vinny Eastwood. We've got a campaign which is going to be presenting the plight of our story to the world. We've got a campaign around that. We have got, I'm just putting something in our chat right now, Dr. Rima, which we have created a petition, and this petition unfortunately is on change.org, but I've just put the details in the chat for you, Dr. Rima, to share.
You say unfortunately it's on change.org.
Well, I mean that in the sense that what we wanted to do was to have this petition go through the New Zealand government website, which they have a petition facility there.
Got it. I got it. Okay.
But we are not allowed to if it's an issue before the court. We are not allowed to. So, but that there is something else we can do there, but I can't talk about it here. So we have done a change.org petition calling for the dismissal of the charges, or at the very least, the removal of a prison sentence as punishment of
my goodness, I'm devastated. Why didn't you ask us to put it up on Prevent Genocide 2030 for you? We will do that. Send us the text and give us the email addresses to which it goes, and we will make this an action item that people from around the world can communicate with your New Zealand targets for.
Yes, thank you, sister. Yes, we've only just did this morning. So this and
well, that's
and then
no excuse.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know the future a couple of days ago, but anyway, that's all right. No, we would love that because I've promoted preventgenocide2030.org very, very far and wide through my channels, and so I would appreciate that. But what we had in the last 2 weeks in New Zealand, we had, of course, a now very, very, very famous horror event occur when a British women's rights activist was assaulted in New Zealand at a speaking rally that she was having, And the New Zealand police stood by and watched this poor lady be attacked, intimidated, possibly killed if they could have got to her, and they didn't intervene until the very last second. And that drew unbelievable attention to New Zealand as a place that's not safe for anyone with anyone speaking the truth, but anyone with a conservative view or a right-leaning view.
Let's talk about what her view was and what her name is.
Well, her name is Kelly J. Sheen Minshall, aka Posey Parker, and her main thrust of her message is women need to stand up for their rights and have them maintained. That women's suffrage, which led to women having equality and rights and the right to vote, etc., need to be protected. That's number one. Number two is that women and little girls need to be protected in public bathrooms and public spaces where men are now permitted, if they self-identify as a female, to enter with impunity. And so she's pushing about safety, and that, you know, she's not anti-trans people. She's about pro-rights and pro-safety. And then the third thing that I think she's driving at is honesty around the idea of what makes a woman. Can a man have a baby? What makes a woman? And she talks about those things. So those are the three things which are self-evident as being true. Now, she was forced out of her Auckland meeting. She was lied about in the media, lied about by politicians, and she was that fearful that when she left the protest after almost literally being pulled apart, she left the police station where she was taken to for her safety and went straight to the airport and flew straight out of New Zealand. And that made world headlines. But a week later, Vinny and I were sentenced to prison sentences, the harshest prison sentences given to two individuals outside of China for COVID-19 lockdown resistance. We've got the worst charges. In Australia right now, the Australian government is reimbursing and cancelling charges and fees and fines for people that have been persecuted and prosecuted for disobeying COVID lockdowns. So Australia is well ahead of us. In the United Kingdom, there is no such thing as a prison sentence for disobedience to COVID rules of any kind. But not New Zealand. Not New Zealand. We are still persecuting and prosecuting people and it's a travesty. So what we want, guys, please, everybody, I've just put that in the chat. I'll give you a really good flyer today, Dr. Rima, for Prevent Genocide, because we need everybody around the world to let the New Zealand government know that this is injustice of the highest order. We had, like I was saying earlier, we had a murderer sentenced to 12 months home detention yesterday, and we get 4 months and 3 months in prison, and as non-violent family men and myself as without convictions and with my service to country and community record. So we need to raise global community awareness around this. Absolutely. So that it can get out there as far and wide as possible, sister, because I really do. I fear for Vinny. I fear for me. My trust is in the Lord, of course. And but as you say, you know, you've got to do your utmost best to help God to protect yourself. And that's what, talking to the point that Indigenous people are saying, oh, well, just trust the Spirit. No blinking way. You know, I question which spirit they're talking about, but, you know, the amount of times I've heard, you know, my Māori family say to me, oh, you know, just trust the Spirit. Well, if you trust the Spirit, I've seen nothing happen. Nothing happen in all the years people have been saying that. And so
I would say, so this trusting the Spirit, whatever the Spirit is, how's that worked out?
Not good.
Not good.
So we have to be proactive, dear Sister Rima, and I've put in there the link in there, but I'm going to, which I hope our producers Gaz and V will help go online and sign. That would be good. But we need everybody to get in behind me and Vinny. We really do. We've put our necks out for a long, long time now. Vinny more than anyone for a long, long time, but not at this level for the last 3 years that we've done it. So thank you, Sister V. So we really need help. We do.
Somebody had to lay down the barbed wire so that others could walk across their backs in freedom. And unfortunately in New Zealand, that happens to be us. And those barbs hurt.
I bet they do. Are you, this is a very personal question and neither of you has to answer it, but are you in relationships where you have the partnership strength to rely upon, or is that an additional burden that you're struggling with?
I'll go first if you like, Vinny. I've got a wonderful, wonderful wife who is completely behind me, and we have our faith, we have our strength of our relationship, of our marriage, and we are united and resolute.
So glad to hear that, Vinny.
Yeah.
With your lovely new baby.
Well, it's so wonderful to know that I've got a supportive partner behind me through all of this. Even with a newborn baby, she came into court and she loves me because I stood up when very few others did.
I am so happy. This makes an enormous difference. People who are also struggling with the pain of a relationship that's being pulled apart because they need to speak clearly and stand up. That's excruciating, and I'm truly happy that you're not experiencing those pains as well.
Thank you, Rima.
It's really important, and I'm happy to hear that and feel that from you. So we have been talking about support. I'm looking at the time. We have been looking at support, and we have not yet said that you need to support this platform. You need to support peopleforpeople.ning.com. Why do you need to do that? Because after all, there are so many other uncensored platforms where people can speak the truth and not be told that they have to back off from this or that topic, right? Wrong. There are very few. And this is one, and it is a precious place where through love of truth and through dedication to dissemination, the people who run it are making personal sacrifices of an enormous magnitude so that we can have this platform, so that we can speak our truth, whatever it is. I mean, if you've listened to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports before, you know that Vinny or Billy could have come on and said something that I disagree strongly with, and they still would have the right to say it, not only because of the way my program works, but because that's how this site works. This is a place for discourse, not a place for conformity. And it is run from pure generosity by the people who run it, but they have costs, and they have internet services, they need new equipment, they need the ability to be yet more powerful than they already are. So how would it hurt to help them? How would it hurt to not help them? Badly. How would it hurt to help them? Not at all. And you'll also feel really good about what you do. If you go to peopleforpeople.ning.com website, you'll find a donate button. And you know what you're supposed to do with the donate button? You're supposed to click it, and then you're supposed to donate. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, I heard just before the show.
Man, I've been doing it wrong all these years, Rima.
Oh my goodness! What have you been doing?
Being the person donated to, I guess.
Oh, well, no, that's not the deal. No, of course. Now, of course, there are many places to put your donations. You don't have to beggar yourself, but you do have to You do have to share. If you have something and you value what you're hearing, do share. The other point that I wanted to make was that you need to tell your friends. You think that because you know it, they know it. Nope, they don't. Tell them and tell them what's going on and tell them what you value to help them turn their attention toward it as well. So we always try to make sure that people I was going to say, just before the show, I was told that somebody left the show last week because I offended them. Oh, I said something offensive. I said something that was not acceptable to everyone. How did that happen? And the offensive thing that I said was, if you're not donating, you're using this site, peopleforpeople.ning.com, and you're not donating to keep it alive and to help it, you're being irresponsible. And the person was so offended that I said they were being irresponsible that they left. You're being irresponsible if you're not supporting what you believe in. Vinny, Billy, Natural Solutions Foundation, peopleforpeople.ning.com. If you're just coasting along with a free ride, 7 generations, how would the 3 before you feel about that? How would the 3 coming after feel about the fact that you let important things languish because you didn't feel like sharing? 7 generations, pretty good construct. Okay, any comments on what I've just said, gentlemen?
Well, when people address your faults, there's a old way of doing it. Oh, he must not know many of my faults. If he did, he would have mentioned more.
Yes, exactly. Billy, any comments on this area?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we support peopleforpeople.ning.com because, it's a labour of love that they do. I mean, I think what needs to happen, and I know Gaz is listening, is, there needs to be an element of direct support from sponsors involved in this, because if you look at most of the high level freedom platforms such as this, they have sponsors and good sponsors. They're not just, you're not going to find BP, Shell or sponsoring these types of things, or Rothmans or a cigarette
you do
company.
run.
Yeah, exactly. If you do, you shouldn't be there. Or if it's proudly presented to you in association with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Right. This platform
and George,
proudly presented to you by Pfizer.
Yeah, which we do have examples of down here, by the way. Then, and I want to talk to Gaz about that because I think we've got some opportunities which Dr. Rima knows about. And but yeah, this needs to be supported. And like I was saying, there are fantastic platforms, freedom platforms, truth platforms that have good partners involved in that. And it's not a sellout; it's just a reality. I can't do the work. I can't do I can't do the work I do unless I'm supported by the people to do it. I don't have a job. This is my job. What I do. If we're lucky to get sponsorship, then that helps. So I'd like to say to everybody, in the meantime, just chuck in $20, $50, $10, whatever you've got to help this site keep going, because they have to keep going. Without them, we've got nothing. So. And that's a little reminder to me to get into my action to do that again, too, by the way, Gaz, if you're listening. So, no, I completely support that. And in terms of people respecting what type of platform this is, for me, yes, I can quite easily listen to the things that interest me on this site, including yourself, Dr. Rima, and there's some things that I don't listen to. And that's all about freedom of choice. You don't need to get offended by it. You just go, oh, okay, well, that's not for me. I'll come back and listen to someone else and leave that nut job Dr. Rima alone.
By all means. Let me sit here all by myself, please.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously, This is a precious platform, and we need to support it.
Having said that, I'd like each of you to tell our listeners and viewers, because this is a podcast after all, about your shows and about how they can hear more and become part of your particular communities of communication and interest. Vinny?
Oh, right. Well, you can go to vinnyeastwood.com. You can look at all the social media links that are on there. You can follow us on Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, and Twitch, as well as you can access the archives and the MP3s from vinnieastwood.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood like, go ahead, make my news. So please, ladies and gentlemen, go to there, and if you like my music as well, there is a Vinny and the Vendettas tab on vinnieastwood.com, and hopefully you might want to think about chipping into Patreon so that we can get some of our music properly recorded in studio, which we are in the middle of at the moment, and that's come to a bit of a stall because, of course, funding has just kind of gone out the window with all of this debacle. So a lot of help is needed, so please go to vinnieastwood.com and donate today. Automatic payments are really highly valued, because that way you're giving us a cup of coffee a week, or one meal a week, or whatever it is that you can spare. One of my listeners, his donation amount covers the internet, the power, and phone in one donation every month, and there's so many other costs just because the rising cost of living has stretched us so far. So thank you, Rima.
Billy?
Yeah, probably the best way that people can, because I'm not quite set up the same way as Vinny yet, but if they go to River of Lies, www.riveroflies.co.nz, you can donate to me that way, or you can email me at billy@ibc.net.nz. That's Billy, Bravo, India, Lima, Lima, Yankee, Billy at IBC, India, Bravo, Charlie, .net, November, Echo, Tango, .nz. So if you'd like to reach out to me and support us that way, that would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, you know, weekly, I guess, weekly direct payments are probably the easiest thing to do, but, you know, anything helps. It really does.
Let me ask you a question, Billy. Were you a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker before River of Lies?
Never, ever.
So you just woke up one day and you said, I know what I'll do a documentary.
Essentially, that's correct. Yeah, essentially that is correct. It's exactly what I did, because, I mean, I've made music videos as a musician. I have done a couple of documentaries, but I was only the talent. I wasn't the person putting it together. So this is quite different, and I've got a fantastic lady, tiniest of tiniest support crew involved in it. Vinny's part of that, but we're getting it done. The truth is coming. So if people would like to support me, that's the best way to do, is go to riveroflies.co.nz. And if they want to look at the trailers, all they need to do is put into YouTube River of Lies, the New Zealand Scandemic, and all 4 trailers include, plus a speech I did at Anako Pulko a couple of months back, will come up for them, and they can get a really good sense of who I am and what we're working on. That's for sure.
Splendid. Hello, Ralph.
Hello, Dr. Rima. Hello, Billy and Vinny. I apologize for not being on the program. I am being driven through the streets of Austin right now, and we just had a very nice sushi dinner, and we're off for the evening. So I wanted to just drop in and tell you how much I admire you two, and how much I want to express my support for you. I believe that we should bug Amnesty International, and I think that whatever we can do to help you, we should do. that's what I have to say.
Let's talk about
Thanks, Ralph.
Amnesty International. Do you want us to jump all over Amnesty International and make sure that they see you as people being persecuted for your free speech, or is that not an approach you like?
I think you should really to expose them because, I think they are a leftist organisation. I approached Amnesty International New Zealand, and Amnesty International had just put out an entire paper that they submitted to the New Zealand government and put into public, basically attacking people like me and you and Vinny as misinformation spreaders. This is Amnesty.
Oh, no.
Yes. Absolutely. Yep. Amnesty International is among the woke institutions. And in fact, it is a great institution that has been taken over by the woke, and I think we need to call it to account. We need to start calling them all to account. The Red Cross, the Amnesty International, all of those organizations. And why? Because they've basically surrendered their liberal heritage in order to become part of the new control system.
Ralph had mentioned Amnesty International, and I said, why bother? Why bother? They are worthless at this point. But I did not know what you just shared, Billy. Vinny, where are you on Amnesty?
Well, I haven't received any, if that's what you're asking. But it's something that's very at the front of somebody like me. It's something that's very much at the front of our thinking. That, have you heard of the organization? Yep, it's probably corrupt. That's the kind of thing. If they have international acclaim, is this organization having like huge amounts of apparatus being organized to destroy them by the establishment? No, then they're part of the establishment, regardless of how much they appear to question it and stand up against it.
Was a time when Amnesty International stood up against the establishment, questioned it, championed the true rights of people who also questioned the establishment. And then, like the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, they became an organ of the establishment. How that happened with each specific institution, it's a different story for each one, but the basic scenario is the same, and it all goes here, money. And control follows the money. So I think we have so much else to expose, including the World Holocaust Organization and the coming governmental tyranny, that I would not be willing to spend my time exposing Amnesty International or the ACLU. I despise them at this point. What I'd like to do is put my effort into making sure that the government of New Zealand understands very clearly that the world is watching this miscarriage of justice and will not accept it very lightly.
Very good.
Yeah, that's an important point. By the way, I used to live in Austin, Texas. Love Austin, Texas. I was a musician there on and off for a couple of years, flying back and forth between there and New Zealand. But I think I think people do. From my view on Amnesty International is that I think they do need to be called out. I do, because they're sucking millions of dollars out of people's pockets all around the world, and fooling people to think that they're interested in this. In New Zealand, we have the Human Rights Commission, and that's exactly the same. The woman, we had a Maori female member of Parliament at the Posey Parker event say that all white cis men are responsible for violence in the world and New Zealand, but the figures bear up to that. Unfortunately, don't bear up to that statement. But
that Human Rights Commission as a proper recipient of public concern about your cases. I mean, they should be defending freedom of speech.
Yeah, and they should be. I mean, at the end of the day, human rights. This is human rights violation of the worst. But what they're doing as well, similar to Amnesty International, they just put out a call for people that have been harmed by gender conversion therapy to tell their stories to them. That's where they are. And the point I was going to make about this Māori MP that said that all white cis men are responsible for violence, she's a former Human Rights Commission worker.
You showed me the video of this woman saying unbelievably hateful, outrageous things like this, and happily bopping down the path, being so pleased with her little self. It was nauseating. But that's what wokeness gets you. Illogical conclusions to irrational premises.
In addition to that, what woke gets you is it makes you broke, as was just discovered with the Today FM, which was put up to oppose News Talk ZB. These are the two main talk radio stations of the private sphere in New Zealand. And Today FM, because it's so woke, it went broke. And they actually pulled their hosts off air right in the middle of them, saying they've screwed us, if you'll pardon my language. So let's face facts here. If you are not playing with the full deck, as everybody who believes in leftism and wokeism absolutely is, the universe will punish you because you're out of step with reality. It won't be us that punishes you. It will be everything that punishes you. That's what happens when you live a lie and try to get others to live it too.
Very, very important point. Now, if somebody says to me, my trust is in that kind of principle, believe, because that, and not because, but we can see that eventually happens. My concern is it's not fast enough, and the amount of damage while that's playing out is unacceptable. So we have to work hard to prevent the bad things from happening. Billy, you look like you're about to say something and you're restraining yourself. Go ahead.
No, yeah. I'm just listening to this and just thinking, really, there needs to be a, there really's got to be a little bit more coordination globally, if we can, amongst people that are being persecuted in the way that we are. We need to kind of, and this again highlights how important peopleforpeople.ning.com is, because we need to hear each other's stories and bring them to light. I mean, even, every day we're seeing the information coming out that the COVID-19 narrative is falling apart. We see that, and that the exposure of climate change tyranny is raising each week. But we've also got to be able to dial down and dial in further into what it means to real people. We need to be able to hear the stories of somebody in the UK like Louise Criffield, who's been fined £20,000 for protesting. I spoke to her a couple of days ago, and to bring to light that while the governments appear to be marching backwards from punishments, they are still punishing people like me, like Vinny, like Louise, like other people in Australia. But in Australia, a friend of mine who's got a political party, the Medical Options Party, Informed Medical Options Party, and his name's Michael O'Neill. He was facing charges very, very similar to mine, but his charges got dismissed about 2 months ago. So
dismissed, right? So,
dismissed.
So we do need to find a way for the persecuted to cooperate around the world. And I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that the network that we've begun to build on the WHO issue is a network that can also help bring attention to persecuted. And maybe we should set up a Telegram group just for the persecuted to post information on.
I think it should be on Prevent Genocide 2030 with a board that people can post on. But let me. I was going to tie something together. Yes, I was, and then I got distracted by the idea that we've just been talking about. Never mind, it will come back or it won't. I think
if Amnesty International and the ACLU and those organizations will not deal with the persecuted truth speakers, then we need to create our own methodology for that. And I agree, the Prevent Genocide 2030 and its WHO campaign are an integral part of that. But we need to look,
because the persecution is going on in order to get people like Billy and Vinny out of the way so that they can roll across the field and take possession of everything. Yes, Vinny, go ahead.
Working title, Scamnesty International. Yeah.
I love it. Scamnesty International. I know what I was going to say. Scamnesty International. Let's do it. What I was going to say is on Prevent Genocide 2030, and if you haven't .org, if you haven't gone there and taken the actions, please do so and then share the links. On that site, you will find something called Press Room. And there's a press release, and there's a cover letter for the press release, and there's a backgrounder for the press release. And I am urging you to share the cover letter, the press release, and the backgrounder, all of which are available as PDFs that you can copy, with every independent journalist that you know, with every person who has a podcast, who has a blog, who has a website where these issues are discussed, who sends out a newsletter, every single person who makes a YouTube video on their channel about issues that have to do with human rights and freedom and survival and anti-transhumanism. Send that information to them and say, this is the biggest story there is. Nothing else is this big. And help stimulate the dialogue, because it's only, in my view, it's only the political pushback, which you guys are being punished for successfully generating. It's only the political pushback that can save us.
Precisely. Absolutely. I agree with that, because the thing is, if we trace back to how the Nazis worked at the Holocaust, basically, you and I have spoken about this before, Dr. Rima, where we've said, basically people are being educated all the way to the gas chambers, but how the Nazis did it is that they identified certain people within the various Jewish communities to basically placate people into, no, it's all right, they'll never do that. We're German, they're German, so they're not gonna, we're fifth generation Germans. Why would they do this? It's just fear. And they said that all the way as they marched to the railway tracks, to the rail stations, for transportation into ghettos and then into concentration camps.
Correct.
And the big thing is here is that if we look at the Nazi approach, we can see it being rolled out across the planet here. But what we have to do is which led to the famous uprising in the Polish ghetto against German authorities, where Polish Jewish resistance fighters in the ghettos wasted a whole heap of German Nazis, and a lot of them managed to get out. A lot didn't. But the funniest thing was, and it's not funny as in ha-ha, but the strangest thing was, is that the amount of people that stood there while they had this moment where they could have gone through the wall and get out, they didn't, because they thought they didn't, because they believed it was all going to work out. And that's what we can't do here. We can't think, well, if they can beat us, we shouldn't fight. That's not the way. I mean, people are trying to say to me, well, Billy, you maybe should stop the documentary, and that'll stop the persecution. It's not going to do that. It is not going to stop anything that they're doing to me and Vinny. And in fact, I would say, Dr. Rima, that if we get the thing out, it could be something that may help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me point out from a psychological point of view that being nice to an abuser in the hopes that the abuser will stop abusing you if you're nice enough is a guaranteed formula to perpetuate the abuse. Guaranteed. It doesn't feel like it to the victim. It doesn't feel like it to the appeaser, but it always stimulates the abuser to abuse more. So stopping the documentary, not saying the free speech things that need to be said, being quiet, bowing your head, lowering your body, and hoping that they won't see you is a sure way to guarantee that you will be further abused, and so will the people around you.
Absolutely, and that's my point. That's exactly my point here. And, I mean, nobody wants to be a martyr. Nobody wants to have to do this stuff. But it's kind of
so true.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of like I don't think I could live in my own skin. Sometimes, Dr. Rima, I have literally fantasized, don't get worried, about the idea that if I could do it all again, I wouldn't. I'd sometimes dream to myself that just maybe if I could do it again, I wouldn't do it because of all the hassle it's caused over the last 3 years. But I've come to the conclusion I can fantasize about that as much as I like. It's not going to change the fact that I could never have been silent. Conscience is silenced when we are in something like this. Then you've got no backbone, you've got no courage, and I as much as I like to fantasize about that, I keep on landing on the same spot, which tells me there's no way I could have remained silent.
And you, Vinny?
I had a guy at a party many years ago asked me, Vinny, what if somebody gave you $50 million to stop doing what you're doing? I said, yeah, sure. I would give it all. I would donate it all to like all these other people who are doing the thing that I'm doing and give them all the best equipment and stuff like that. He's like, no. You'd have to be on contract that you wouldn't. Not only would you not be speaking the truth, but you wouldn't help anybody who is. $50 million. What do you think? And I was like, I can't. Just couldn't do it.
So interesting. I look at the horrors that we're contending with, the ones that already exist, have been brought into existence, and the ones that face us if we do not win this set of battles. And I say, I cannot stay sane. Arguably, it's a relative sanity, but I cannot stay as sane as I am and stay alive and not fight this fight. And as many of you know, it's been a very expensive fight. My husband was murdered in this fight, and there are people actively trying to kill me on a regular, though intermittent basis. That's expensive. That's frightening. That's wounding. I can't not do this. I am wired in such a way that the only way I can live with myself is to fight what needs to be fought and to embrace what needs to be embraced, and do so publicly. These are requirements for continuation. I know you feel the same way, Ralph.
Absolutely. We cannot do otherwise. And
Ralph has
by the
become
way,
a skilled
you're breaking.
ventriloquist. Ralph has become a skilled ventriloquist who can speak articulately without moving his face. You're
That's
frozen.
awesome.
Your image is frozen. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Ralph. You said absolutely. Go ahead.
Just turn off your camera and then turn it back on again, Ralph. That should solve it.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes, speak, Ralph.
No, that's it. I'm okay. We're about to end the program, and it's been an extraordinary program. You know, and I'm sorry to hear more of it, but I will make sure that it gets posted probably sometime next week. All right. Great to be with you,
Ralph,
all.
have a good day and a good trip. Gentlemen, I see you as standard bearers for the battle. I see you as having taken positions at the front of the column and having opened a space for more people to come forward into the battle space. And I am very proud to know you, and I am very proud to support what you are doing and to be part of the same battle force, fighting the same enemies with different skirmishes defining the particular moment of battle. But I think you're both brave, and I think you're both absolutely essential to us at the hearts, at the minds, and at the spirit, where we decide how to fight, whom to fight, and what to fight. I am very, very proud to be your friend and associate.
Mm. Bravery is not the absence of fear, it's to feel that fear and overcome it and deal with it and do what you got to do anyway.
Indeed. Indeed.
Quite right. That's exactly how it is. And we're proud to know you too, Sister Rima and Brother Ralph. And look forward to doing the good work that we're going to do together with Magic Dicol and Nanasoma. Dear Rima, I'm so excited to have you involved in that, and I'll be talking to Gaz about that too. So yeah,
everybody
awesome.
Listening here is saying, the what? The who? What did you just say? It's coming, and it's good. I promise. Thank you so much for being with us, gentlemen. Any final words before we wrap up today's show?
Just sign our petition, please. Everybody, sign our petition, and put messages in there. And if you can support us beyond that, please do. But thank you, Dr. Rima, Reverend Ralph. Also, thank you to our family at People for People, Gaz and V, for being our producers today. And Vinny, I will call you soon. Thank you for having me. God bless you all.
Thank you. Vinny, final words.
I would like people to go to vinnyeastwood.com and scroll down to the Day Democracy Died banner. Big blue banner with me and Billy getting busted. And so that you guys, if you're curious about what happened to us on that day, this is the most comprehensive compilation of all the footage done without any fat to be seen. It's all been trimmed, so it's a great watch if you like heartbreaking kind of stuff, I think.
No, there's stuff you have to know.
Yeah.
And this is stuff you have to know.
Look, the world's not a nice place sometimes. It's not all sunshine, rainbows, and sugar-coated cupcakes. Some of it smells bad, some of it looks scary, some of it is dangerous, and we need to constitute ourselves appropriately for dealing with this world, that there is a chasm in between those with a conscience and those without. People who have a conscience are incapable of thinking like or coming up with any idea what the mind is like of somebody who doesn't have a conscience. This is what is so puzzling for people when they see brutal murders, massive conspiracies. They go, how could they do that? Because you make the mistake of thinking that because you would never do that nobody would. You make the mistake of thinking that, like you, everybody's got a conscience. It's just not true. These are things that we like to tell ourselves because we fear the cold, harsh reality of murderers, rapists, satanic abusers, and adrenochrome, and goodness knows what other kind of things are going on this planet that we don't even have words for yet. They're that evil, they're that depraved, they're that terrifying to behold that only a few in this planet have really witnessed them. This is the world that we live in, ladies, gentlemen, my fellow slaves of the global plantation. The world is calling upon you to recognize, deal with, and do something about these threats that assail every man, woman, and child of conscience. And each and every one of you is the center of your own little universe. You know people that I don't. You know things that I do not. You have resources that I don't. If you are deploying them adequately, if you are doing your part, you may start the ball rolling. You may wake people up. When you tell somebody what the truth is, and they tell you, F off, you're a conspiracy theorist, you might just be the first person from the first social situation at a first different time in somebody's life that told you this thing. But by the time they've said, F off, you're a conspiracy theorist, to 6 different people at 6 different times in their life, by the time the 7th, this is statistically significant, the 7th different person at a 7th different time from a 7th different social circle that tells you something that's contrary to your very strongly held belief, you will consider changing that belief. How this works in reality is all you've got to do is see something and say the truth. You cannot convince anyone of anything, David Icke told me, but you can tell them things they cannot unhear. Don't emotionally invest in whether or not your mother or your brother or your sister wakes up because of the things that you tell them, because all you're going to do is set yourself up for disappointment. Pull the pin, chuck it in. That information will blow up in their face later, if they're lucky.
Amen. Beautifully said. Perfectly said. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Billy and Vinny, thank you so much for being with us on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Be free. Speak truth.
Our pleasure. We will. We will.